10. Accidental javelin murder. On July 16, 1983, Liz Cashin accidentally killed her friend Samantha Atherton. The teenage girls were attending the Wirral Grammar School for Girls in Bebington when the accidental murder took place. They'd been throwing javelins as part of sports day. Everything was going fine, the kids were having fun, and then the day took a very dark turn. Liz threw the javelin straight up in the air. It began to make its descent, but then it veered sharply to the right. Her friend Samantha had offered to mark the distance, meaning she needed to be near the end where the javelin would land to mark how far it went. However, she'd gotten distracted and wasn't paying attention. Everyone else saw the javelin coming straight for her head, but Samantha was looking in the other direction. People screamed her name. Samantha turned and looked up, but it was too late. The javelin impacted Samantha just above her left eye, impaling her skull. Samantha had lost consciousness and was taken to the hospital, but she never recovered. She died 4 days later, and Liz Chasin has been living with the trauma of that horrible day at school ever since. 9. Looking for frisbees. At the end of May in 2022, a man searching for frisbees along a lakeshore in Florida was discovered dead. Authorities say he was killed in an apparent alligator attack. Largo police identified the victim as 47-year-old Sean Thomas McGinnis. They say his body was discovered at Taylor Lake. This is not a lake anyone should be swimming at. There are multiple signs posted all around the water warning people not to go swimming. The issue here is that the lake is crawling with alligators. The victim not only combed the edges of the water looking for frisbees, but waded into the water to see if he could find any. To make matters worse, this happened on a Monday night. The victim waded into alligator-infested water when it was dark, and he had poor visibility, meaning he wouldn't have been able to see any alligators coming toward him. His body was only discovered the next day by a dog walker at around 8 a.m. 8. Coffee in Japan. Aika Doheny from County Kilkenny in Ireland was a young girl in her 20s. She traveled to Japan for vacation early in 2022. It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime, halfway around the world to the mystical land of Japan, to visit some family and see some amazing tourist sites. But then everything went horribly wrong. She drank a coffee in the capital of Tokyo and dropped dead. It's unclear what exactly happened, but it had something to do with soya. Aika drank what was believed to have been a soya-based coffee, and it gave her an allergic reaction. It wasn't as if this was her first time drinking coffee, but there was something in the Japanese coffee that her body reacted poorly to. An EpiPen was administered to treat the allergic reaction, but it only provided limited relief. She was whisked away to the nearest hospital, remained in the intensive care unit, and was then flown back to Ireland in an air ambulance. But when she arrived at the St. James Hospital in Dublin, she was pronounced dead. Doheny was a former student at Presentation Secondary School and was pursuing her master's degree at the National University of Ireland at the time of her tragic end. 7. Deadly beach umbrella. A woman died in August of 2022 after she was hit by a beach umbrella. It happened in South Carolina in the area of Horry County during a particularly bad wind. The victim was Tammy Perrault, 63 years old. She was relaxing on the beach near a hotel when suddenly an umbrella was blown from the ground, through the air, and tumbled end over and across the beach until it struck Tammy on the left part of her upper torso. She was impaled by the umbrella shaft, which was propelled by the wind so violently it hit her as if someone had thrown it like a javelin. Tammy was transferred to a local hospital where she was sadly pronounced dead. The Horry County Deputy Coroner Dale Trevethan told CNN Tammy died from massive chest trauma caused by the umbrella. She was already gone before she even reached the hospital. 6. The world's dirtiest man. In the fall of 2022, the dirtiest man alive died, and it may have been because he took the first bath of his life. His name was Amu Haji, an Iranian hermit who earned the title World's Dirtiest Man after he refused to shower for over half a century. For more than 60 years, the hermit refused to touch water or soap. He lived in a dirty shack made from cinder blocks outside the village of Degja, located in the province of Fars. According to local villagers, he experienced emotional setbacks during his youth, which caused him to become a little strange. He refused to wash, and so he lived in his dirty shack covered in soot and grime for most of his adult life. At some point, Amu Haji became extremely unwell in his mind. In 2014, the Tehran Times did a report on him, claiming that he ate roadkill and smoked animal feces. He had a belief that any kind of cleanliness would be the death of him. He thought if he bathed or washed his hands, he would get sick and die. He was so obsessed with being filthy that he even smoked multiple cigarettes at once to pollute his lungs faster. But it was in 2022 when everything went wrong. Amu was 94 years old, and he finally agreed to let the villagers wash him for the very first time. He had a bath and was clean for the first time in over 6 decades, and then he dropped dead. While it looks like the man probably died of natural causes brought on by old age, there are rumors that he died from being given a bath. Some believe that if the dirtiest man alive had continued being filthy, he would still be alive right now. 5. Fighting at the nursing home. In August of 2021, a woman almost died from doing the milk crate challenge. A woman from Dallas was in critical condition after she failed to complete the popular challenge on social media and fell on her head. For those who missed this insanely dangerous challenge, it consisted of walking on milk crates. Milk crates would be stacked into a kind of pyramid, and then the challenger would have to climb to the peak then down the other side. The milk crates could be stacked as many as 7 or 8 high at the top, making the challenge extremely dangerous because of how unstable the milk crates are. The woman in Dallas was filmed doing the challenge outside of a gas station on La Prada Drive. She reached the top of the Great Pyramid, then the crates gave way underneath her and she fell and hit her head. The witnesses, who continued filming after the woman hit the ground, could be heard laughing in the footage as she lay motionless and bleeding. Thankfully, someone who wasn't involved saw what happened and phoned the police, and so the woman was taken to the hospital. There were initial reports that the woman had died, but Dallas Police Chief Eddie Garcia said those reports were false. However, it was really close. The woman fell on her head, split herself open, and nearly bled to death on the sidewalk in front of a gas station. 4. The Yukon backcountry. A 28-year-old man decided he was going to take a trip deep into the Yukon wilderness in the middle of the winter. The Yukon is one of the most dangerous territories in Canada. It's cold, isolated, and crawling with wildlife. If you get lost in the middle of Yukon territory, chances are you'll never make it out alive. The man's name was Evan Payne Russell, and his plan was to explore the wilderness on an extended trip starting in October 2021. He traveled with his friend Mitchell, and they disappeared together into the cold and snowy forest. Months went by and nobody heard from either man. Their families reached out to the local police, hoping they could launch a search party or at least give them some information on what happened. The police learned that the two men had wandered into the bush with little more than a tent, some gear, and a meager amount of supplies. And yet, they'd been hoping to spend the entire winter in the forest. They also didn't leave their exact destination with anyone, so the police didn't know where to look. On June 25th, almost a year after the men were last seen, Mitchell was discovered barely alive in a remote area, thanks to a rescue team and a helicopter. On July 1st, Evan Russell was discovered dead. They discovered the remains of a camp where it looked like he'd been trying to survive the winter months, and nearby a pile of human remains. No criminal cause was ever suspected in the death of Evan Russell. It appears he and his friend became separated as they tried desperately to survive, and Mitchell just got lucky that he was discovered first. Evan thought he could make it in the Yukon backcountry with nothing more than a tent and some gear, but sadly, that wasn't the case. 3. Air compressor prank. A 46-year-old Japanese man was killed by a lethal dose of air from an air compressor hose, which his co-worker inserted up his bottom. The Japanese workers were at a manufacturing plant in 2018 in Ibaraki, Tsukuba City when the incident occurred. The victim, Akio Ishimaru, was joking around with his younger colleague Yoshiyuka Yoshida. Yoshida thought it would be funny to blast some air up Akio's rear end, but then things took a turn for the worse. Just minutes after the stunt, Akio complained that he wasn't feeling very well. He'd become incredibly sick, had to be taken to the hospital, and he died from his injuries. His co-worker was then arrested even though it was just a stupid prank gone wrong. Yoshida told the police he had no idea an air compressor could kill someone. Here's how the death occurred. The air compressor hose was inserted between the older man's buttocks, and then wind was injected into his body. It didn't go directly into the cavity, of course, but it was shoved against Aika's pants. Still, the force delivered by the air compressor was enough that air shot through the victim's body, damaged his lungs, and injured his internal organs so badly that he was dead by the end of the day. We're not sure what happened to the co-worker who was arrested. The bizarre death made big headlines in 2018, but the story was never followed up on. We don't know if he's doing time in prison for murder or if he was let go because it was just a horrible prank gone wrong. 2. Swimming pool sinkhole. A man in Israel died in one of the worst and strangest ways imaginable. His name was Kami Yosef, only 25 years old, and he met his end at a pool party. It was summer of 2022, and Kami was attending a party at a couple's villa about 25 miles from Tel Aviv. Everything was going fine until a sinkhole suddenly formed at the bottom of their swimming pool and the man was sucked into it. The bottom of the pool gave way, creating a giant hole which acted kind of like a drain at the bottom of the bathtub. Just imagine being in an oversized bathtub when the drain is opened and all the water goes spiraling down. Kami got caught inside that whirlpool and was dragged down into the sinkhole below the floor of the pool. The owners of the house were placed under arrest by Israeli police. They were suspected of causing Kami's death by negligence. The sinkhole underneath the pool was so big it took emergency crews and the army to uncover Kami's body. 1. Cliff selfie. A man from New Delhi in India fell off a cliff in the summer of 2022. The 29-year-old individual was standing on a rocky outcrop near the famous Totagati temple in Uttarakhand when the incident occurred. He was with some friends and they'd stopped on the side of the highway, and the man then got dangerously close to the edge of the cliff to snap a photograph. He lifted his camera to take a selfie, lost his footing, and fell off the cliff to his death. His name was Dilip Mandal, and he's one of the most recent victims of death by selfie. According to the officials who dealt with the disaster, the victim was part of a friend group on vacation. 3 of them were going by car to Sonprayag when they stopped to take a break at the temple. Dilip Mandal's friends looked on in absolute horror as he slipped over the edge while taking the selfie and fell way down into the gorge. They had no time to react, not so much as a second to try and save their friend. Dilip's body was only recovered after a 2-hour-long operation by the State Disaster Response Force. And while his death was undoubtedly tragic and horrific, there was one silver lining. The only good thing is that he died immediately upon impact, so there wasn't any suffering involved. Still, his friends are in shock and the man's family is devastated. Thanks for watching. Would you rather get gobbled up in a sinkhole or eaten by an alligator? What do you think would be the worst way to go? Let us know in the comments below, and remember to hit subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you next time. Bye.